Hi guys, Lindsay here with Storybook Family Farm. Normally, I keep myself living pretty much underneath a rock. I don't want to be bothered by what's in the news, by the headlines, by the titles, by anything of the sort like that, because it's too stressful. And I found a long time ago that if I just basically isolate myself from those sorts of sources, then I don't have to worry about it. But every now and again, I will click on a YouTube video that does sort of inform me as to what's going on, but pretty much every time afterwards I go, oh yeah, I'm excluded from that. And I want to share with you guys how you can exclude yourself from the system also, because to be quite honest, the system is really not the greatest way to keep going. Our ancestors, they didn't live this way. Modern grocery stores were not a thing 100 years ago, especially if you lived rurally. There'd be like basically what you'd consider kind of like a surplus store nowadays, where they have like bulk goods of flour, sugar, oats, things of that nature. But that was pretty much it. You didn't have stores that have, hundreds of different types of vegetables being trucked in from all over the planet and things of that nature. You have to realize that the way that we're living right now, it is new in human existence. The last 100 years, we've expanded so far that now it's like we're on a different planet, basically. But so every time I I fall for the YouTube trap of the clickbaity titles and stuff, of trying to be like, wait a second, I live so isolated and so away from society that I don't even know what's going on. And I only live a couple miles from town. I mean, it's really not hard to do. Even when I lived in town, I pretty much still lived this way of being underneath a giant rock. And let me tell you, under my rock, it is very peaceful. So in the video, the guy was talking about how basically we're going to be running out of beef products and all this stuff, and how it's, all this conspiracy theory BS. Which it is true. It is true that there's, forces at work that are trying to basically squash the food system that is in current existence, to essentially force people to partake in food-like products, of consuming food-like things, which most people already are on a daily basis. If you go to fast food restaurants, you're pretty much consuming a food-like product. When I was a little kid back in the 90s, I used to say, I need real food. I don't need this fake food, which even as a little kid, when things were not even advertised, I could still tell the difference between a real burger that came from my grandfather's cows or something that came from McDonald's or a TV dinner or things of that nature. I did not grow up with the healthiest eating systems. My mom was very much disabled when I was a little kid, so we ate a lot of frozen dinners, TV dinners, things of that nature. Thankfully, by the kindness of other people and stuff, a lot of meals would get delivered. Me and my sister learned to cook at a very young age, things of that nature. So anyways, whenever I emerge out from underneath my rock, I feel all of these energies and all of these things of how I should be really stressed out and I should be really afraid, especially with the guy talking about beef, which is silly because I have not bought beef in over a decade because of the fact that we've chosen to do alternate red meat sources. So we live rurally, as you can tell. There's quite a bit of woods around me here. We actually enjoy hunting for white-tailed deer. Every single year we try to get, one or more deer. But in some years you can get multiple deer that then will carry you through a few bad years. For us, we've had a couple rough years where I haven't gotten a deer in 2 years. This property is only 2 acres of land. We don't have, the deer pretty much just walk through the back corner here. So it's kind of touch and go if we're going to get deer presence through here or not. So I'm not going to advocate for hunting that much in this video, simply because not everybody has access to it. And sometimes it can be kind of hit or miss if you're going to get something or not. It's kind of one of those, it's kind of like gambling, I suppose, but you could do things to ensure more success. But one of the things that we've done is we've looked for alternative sources to what everybody's growing commercially. We've looked to alternative sources and looked towards the past of what did our ancestors raise, or what did people before they came over to the Americas, what they raised and what they did, because this country is a very new country, and basically from the get-go people have been like, oh, well, there's tons of space. Let's just go balls to the wall and just go crazy with it. Let's just raise animals that are very inefficient. Cows are something that are very inefficient, unless if you have tons and tons of land, which obviously makes them inefficient. On our on our piece of land, we raise a lot of goats. We have 10 different Nigerian goats. Granted, 2 of them are young. We raise them primarily for milk, but eventually, like this coming year, we're going to be raising some of them out for red meat. The other sources that we've done to make it so that way our meat sources are much more sustainable on a small scale is we've chosen to do animals that aren't really available commercially because of the fact that they are sustainable. If you're raising meat birds like the Cornish crossbirds, you have to buy them in every single year, which is an upfront cost. You have no control over if the hatchery is going to have them or not. You don't have a lot of control in the whole process because they can't be bred by the modern human. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but you have to have a lab and you have to artificially inseminate. And I don't even want to try to artificially inseminate a chicken. That just seems ridiculous when you could just raise rabbits. Rabbits have the same turnover. It's 10 to 12 weeks for them to be butchered. The mamas do all of the hard work within the first month and a half or so of milk, giving them milk and providing for them, creating warmth for them. There's so much less work than doing chickens, and they cost about the same amount, if not, they're actually probably a bit cheaper because they like to eat grass a lot better than chickens do. They're designed to basically eat grass, eat hay, things of that nature. You just give them a little bit of pellets to supplement them and they're good to go. It makes things much cheaper. For us, we don't raise full-size birds because of the fact that they are very expensive. If you're not looking at trying to sell whole birds, like taking them to a butcher shop, because in the state that I live in Ohio, you cannot legally sell your own meat that you process on your own farm to other people. You have to then send it to a butcher shop and have them do it and them get inspected, and then you have further inspections that you have to do to be able to legally sell your own meat. It's kind of ridiculous. There's a whole bunch of red tape. So if you're honestly not looking to sell meat, it makes more sense to go with a smaller bird, to go with Bantam chickens. They eat way less food. They take up way less room. They're way quieter, much easier to handle, much easier to clean because, well, they're a lot smaller. Kids are not as intimidated by them. And if you're a crazy chicken lady like I am and are obsessed with looking at all the colors and seeing how the genetics play out, works out nicely. You don't look as crazy for having 50-something chickens when they're like a third of the size of a full-size bird. The other thing that we've done too is we've invested in breeding stock for all of our livestock. Every animal that we are raising on our farm, we have breeding stock for that, so that way it is a constant regenerative thing. One of the things in the YouTube video that I watched earlier was talking about how with cattle, it takes us approximately 4 years for it to go from start to raising the next line. Basically, if a calf is born, then it takes so many years and months or whatever for them to get pregnant, and then for them to give birth, and then for that next one to be born. It's about a 4-year cycle to go from start to finish. Whereas with smaller livestock, like rabbits, which I know that's a white meat, it's very much like chicken. It tastes the same. It has a nicer texture. There's not as much fat on it, so it's actually a really nice meat. That sort of a thing. It's about, well, they're 6 months old whenever you can breed them, so that's not that old. You breed them, they're pregnant for a month, they give birth, and then 3 to 4 months from there, you're ready to process them. So it's 9 months from start to finish if you got a brand new baby rabbit, which, nobody sells those. You have to wait till they're, 5-6 weeks old before you can buy them. So that sort of jumpstarts your process right then and there. Plus they're ridiculously cheap to raise. All of these things, if you go with the smaller livestock, makes it so that way you can go from start to finish way faster. Granted, it might make it so you have to process more animals, but it makes it so you don't have so much time invested in one animal. A lot of times too with cattle, if they break a leg, say they, were walking in a pasture area like what I got here, where there's woods, there's trees, there's stumps, there's rocks, there's anything like that. If they break a leg, you then are screwed. You can't take them to a butcher shop because they have to be able to walk in and off of the trailer. So then you're pretty much screwed and having to figure out and scramble what you're going to do with, 1,000-pound cow, basically, to try to figure out how to butcher. And to be quite honest, I've butchered pigs before. I've done several deer in one day. I've done larger stuff. I've done smaller stuff. And honestly, I could not even fathom trying to, on the fly, figure out how to butcher and hang a cow that weighs over 1,000 pounds. That is not feasible for the modern person, for even a normal person, even someone that, has a lot of butchering skills. You have to have a lot of equipment, heavy equipment, to lift something that's that heavy. If you're on a small scale homestead like I am, the heaviest piece of equipment you have is a small truck or a lawnmower, something of the sort like that. That has no lifting capabilities to lift something that is anywhere near that heavy. Now, I know I've touched on rabbits a lot, and I've touched on chickens, which, those are great white meat sources. I've touched on the goats a little bit about how they can also be used as a red meat. But one of the most sustainable sources of red meat that we have found to raise ourselves is actually ducks. You can cut them in a certain way once you're butchering them and things of that nature, which, if you're curious, We incubate our duck eggs because we bought incubators back in the day because we knew that this was something we wanted to do, was to be able to have a sustainable closed loop system. So once we bought animals, we didn't then have to buy them again, because that's a really expensive part of the gateway to getting into homesteading, is the initial upfront cost. So if you can do it so you can afford to buy a cheap incubator, or get some Bantam chickens because they'll sit on eggs. We've had a Bantam hen actually hatch out several ducks for us. But if you do it right from the beginning, invest in things from the beginning, you can create a lot of sustainability, which means basically translates into money savings. So for us, we like raising the ducks. They take about 10 to 12 weeks, just like the rabbits, to grow out and be butchered size. Whenever we butcher them, we actually cut the breast meat off. So then that way it's essentially like having really high quality steaks whenever we want. We freeze the breast separately. They're about I have really big hands, so it's hard to tell. They're about the palm of my glove in size for the breasts and stuff. So one breast is more than enough for an adult. It's actually kind of hard for us to finish an entire duck breast by ourselves once you add in the sides and things of that nature. But it is really cheap to raise them, and then that is a great red meat source. So if you're outsourcing some of your, say, beef products with doing things like having your steak cuts be actually from a duck or a goose, you could do that. You could also make it so then that way, if you raise, say, goats, instead of worrying about steaks and roasts and things of that nature, you could use them essentially for burger meat if you wanted to. Or, save your burger meat for what you buy at the store, because that's usually some of the cheapest cuts of meat. So it is getting a lot snowier than I had anticipated, and I still have rabbit chores to do this morning. So I'm gonna cut this off here because I'm starting to get pretty cold. The real feel today is actually just about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty nippy out, especially since I've been out here for over an hour working on chores. So if you guys have any things that you would like to add in the comment section, please feel free to do so, about how you are making things cheaper on your homestead, making things more sustainable, or just things that you found that made it way more expensive than buying meat at the store. For us, we're all about trying to find the ways to make it sustainable like our ancestors did in the past, but also trying to make it so that way it's affordable, because in this economy, you really got to be crunching numbers. You really got to be figuring out, okay, what is cheaper to do yourself, what is higher quality to do yourself, and what is better to actually outsource. For us, we outsource our pork because, well, we don't have the room for it. We don't like raising pigs. They're noisy. They stink. It's terrible. But we know people that love raising them and have the space for them, so it works out. So anyways, that's it for today. I've got to get going because it is getting very, very cold outside. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.